Good day, everyone. Today, I've got a very special guest. She's been my spiritual teacher actually since 2012, I think, a decade in the making. And she's the founder, anchor, and channel of the modality called Transference Healing. And you may actually find more info on this very unique modality on www.transferencehealing.com. So, hello, Alexis.
Hi, Danny. It's lovely to see you.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a rare chance to have you do an
Yeah,
interview. So,
exciting, isn't it? I think it's time, especially with all the energies that we've got running this year. So I think
oh
it'll
yeah,
be interesting for
2023.
people.
It's 2023 is one of those years where there's like a huge shift in the frequencies and vibrations, and I think we're entering into probably like a 3 year period in which there's going to be lots of trials and tribulations, but then there's a whole lot of rewards
Yeah.
um, to be gained. And we'll go on later to what I see going on in 2026, just as a brief preview.
Yeah.
But how's your year been since this year started?
I think that everybody, I've touched the ground running, and I'll explain why that's happening. I think everybody's going to be feeling a push right from the beginning of the year, actually.
Yeah,
Um, and the energies are, when we go through and we talk about it, you can get to see it really is a time of doing this year. And that's
yeah,
why we're feeling that full on push to move forward. Like if we stand still for too long, there will be catalysts or dynamics playing out to get us to move in the direction that we're meant to be moving in, delegated by our higher self. So yeah, I think that you know I feel like it's halfway through the year and it's just the second month, the end of the second month. So that's how big it's kind of been feeling for me. But
actually,
for
honestly
you,
speaking, I don't feel that 2023 has officially started.
yeah, yeah,
We're still right
yeah,
at the tail end of that 2022 energies,
yeah,
but 2023 actually officially starts or will start in March actually. So
yeah,
I think I
yeah,
will go on to share the presentation outline so we
yeah.
can have a little look
Oh,
of
that's
that.
great.
So
Thank you. Yeah,
and I think we'll just go through like chronologically the key activation periods
yeah,
of the
good.
year 2023, and then we'll just have a sneak peek into 2026 because something very interesting is coming up
Yeah,
that year.
yeah,
And so as this year actually began, in the background, there's actually this thing called the Venus star point, which is the energetic point in which Sun actually kisses Venus in the sky. And something actually very interesting happened on the last day of Libra season in 2022. And that's when Sun and Venus actually kissed right at the end of Libra. And we haven't had that since 1879, really. So
mm,
that's since the Renaissance period. And this this one's very interesting because I think around like 3 days later, there was an eclipse, a solar eclipse that also very strongly highlights Venus as well. So there's a lot of Venusian energy that's like surrounding us energetically. And if we were to look at yeah, what's actually going on, um, the picture on the left-hand side will be what's actually active in the sky, the active pentagram, because Venus star points don't just act alone. It actually acts synergistically as a pentagram in the sky. And if I actually just look at what's actually going on in the picture on the left, I realize one thing, there's actually no water signs represented. So there's no water element as I've written here.
mm,
And this actually makes me think that because there's no water element represented in the active pentagram in the sky, it's either we have, at least from what I can see, no water or too much water. It's somehow there's an overcompensatory effect to that. And I think this actually reflects back to what we're actually undergoing in terms of issues like, or potential upcoming issues of accessibility to water. Or water is also very much resonating with the vibrational plane as well. And also the idea of prana also comes in as well. Do you want to add something to that?
Yeah. It's really interesting because, Donnie, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the sphere around the Kabbala that's running this year.
Yeah.
So what I do is I tune in to the Kabbala of the Tree of Life, which is the symbolism of creation. And it's got 10 spheres, actually 11. There's a sphere of dark that lays kind of hidden behind the Kabbala, but the 10 spheres basically are instrumental spheres that orchestrate the creative process, and they run fluently all the time. But just like astrology, there's certain influences that come through by conjunctions and so forth that goes on. Well, it's the same as the way that I see the sphere. So the sphere for this year is the sphere of Netzek, and it's the sphere that has everything to do with the heart. So the heart, it's also oversees Venus. So what I'm seeing with this conjunction process is, we know that this conjunction, like you said, started last year with Venus and Libra, but there's also energies running this year. And what I see is that when you're picking up on this inability to see the element water astrologically, this is because there's so much going on in the universe alchemically that's trying to co-create a change in the way that we utilize the vibrational plane, the way that we absorb prana, the way that we purify and instrumentally absorb the elements through which the soul evolves, right? So there's a real instrumental change in the way that we feel around our heart this year. And Venus, from that through the sphere, really is pushing us to go deeper and deeper into our heart, to get in touch with what we value, what we truly feel, and also to orchestrate an alchemical change in our body where we're absorbing more prana. So in a kind of subliminal level, what's actually happening in the universe, I feel that there's more pure prana coming through on a real subliminal level of the universe, so subatonically, or through the antimatter, so to speak, the matter that we can't see. But what we will find, like I said last year, that I felt that weather was going to be a big instrument of, and a lot of changes around weather. And we saw that happening really after April. There was an influx of weather. And, we know through Australia we were flooding, right? But I feel like this is part of us being in touch with the impact and the need, and to value the essence of what prana does for us, and what's actually, by looking at the changes with weather. And as I said, I feel throughout this year, this is what the channeling I'm bringing through soon, is that there is going to be a lot of lunar impacts going on, and there's going to be a lot of impact around the element of prana and water, because basically the lunar influence is going to affect a gravity pull around the titanic plates of the planet, and there's going to be a ripple effect of cleansing and clearing. We're going to be clearing in our emotional body, in our subconscious. We're going to be clearing all painful issues around our heart. And as we look at the purification of what goes on around climate, what the planet's doing is lifting all of this pain into the light, through the element of water running and the elements of change that's going to happen in our weather. So I feel like this year we're going to have more impact going on around water. And I did see at the beginning of January with these tectonic plate shifts going on, that even though we've got all this element around water being resolved, we've also got fire coming through, and from an electromagnetic perspective, and there's solar changes, and there's a certain dynamics happening astrologically that's actually infusing on a really core level, in a sense of balance, the fire with the water. And what that's going to do is create a lot of electromagnetic changes in our body for us to absorb this prana, to purify our subatomic system, our atoms and cells, and our genetics. So we're moving through and recoding through, resolving and moving through the dynamics of COVID. We're shifting in consciousness and evolving as we heal ourselves. And already we see more water on the planet already, with floods and storms, which is happening a lot in New Zealand at the moment and in Australia. But we've also seen the volcanic activity that I saw coming about, you know, through the events that happened in Turkey with the earthquake. So there's kind of like a cleansing effect, I feel, that's going on, and our chemical change of healing. And, you know, as we go through and we talk about it, Johnny, I do feel that as we look at the year, and as you said, moving into the next couple of years, this year really is about kind of healing ourselves more and evolving really on a core level through our heart, and look at the way that our consciousness runs from our heart. We can talk a little bit about that later. But yeah, I think what you're going to see astrologically is, you know, so certain events that are happening astrologically through the year that are going to show the emphasis of Venus. You know what I mean?
Definitely, yeah. I do see that as well, because like 2022 numerology year 6, and it's all about Venus, which is, you know, right in the middle of the Kabbala sphere.
Yeah.
And then this year we've got the higher octave of Venus, which is Neptune.
Yeah.
Because we are in year 7 now,
Yeah.
numerologically in 2023, and the South Node, which is very much tied to lunations, particularly eclipses of the year. That's why eclipses in 2023, I do see those as really powerful.
Yeah, yeah. And also too, you know, with this Venus energy running and getting in touch with our heart more, it's orchestrating a shift for us to move more into our higher self, to embody more of our higher self, to come into a state of unity more and unconditional love with the world around us, and really, really reevaluate our principles and feelings and values a lot more, even with the number 7, right, that's coming through.
Yeah.
And with that 7, we've got changes going on in our body and reality simply by the way that we're changing in our heart, you know, in all of that. So, yeah, I just feel like sometimes it's harder to surrender and then go with the flow that it is to just make a decision in the moment, right? It's just so
very much so
to let go.
And should I say there's no coincidence here? And this year, around middle of August, we've got a new Venus star point forming in the sky.
Yeah.
And Venus will actually go retrograde and stay in a sign of Leo for an extended period of time. I think it's around 4 to 4.5 months. She seldom does that. It's only like every 19 months she does that. And the last time that she actually went retrograde in the same sign of Leo was like 8 years ago, actually.
Okay, yeah.
And this Leo star point, that means when while Venus is retrograde, and the moment when she kissed the sun, there's actually something very interesting going on. And that's because the planet of awakening, which is Uranus, is very intricately tied to this configuration of Sun and Venus. So Uranus is frequency and vibrations. Taurus is really about embodiment, and Leo is all about the heart.
So you can see it going on there too, right?
Very clearly.
Yeah. Look, I feel what's actually going to happen. I do want to talk about the energies. There's a lot of strong energies running as we
Yes.
move into our heart and we start to go into that state of introspection and deepening our values and moving forward with our perceptions and our intuition as a burst, because that's part of the Venus concept coming in. It enables us to utilize our intuition, and with those powerful lunar effects coming on in, we're going to surrender more in our mindsets and our perceptions of things, and we're really going to start changing or evaluating things in a different way. We're coming more into a state of community, but also in that effect of Venus and the way it's running, and the whole effect of what I see with the moon and the elements of prana and so forth, we're really going to be encouraged to get out of our head and
Yeah.
to utilize more of our intuition. And what I feel when we talk more about the energies behind it is, if we can move more intuitively with what we feel and how we see things and the way that we're changing and reevaluating where we want to put our energy, we're going to create a lot this year.
Yeah.
Right. But if we go by old mindsets and struggle with that intuitive flow, and that change of heart, we're really, really going to get pushed to go into that state of surrender and follow through in that intuitive way. So that's how I feel it's a turning point in our creative process. Not only alchemically, which I'll talk about more as we go through the astrology, but it's also how we create things as well. I feel we have more ability to create now, if we're running this intuitive state of consciousness, than we ever have.
I
This whole 9-year cycle is just huge. And like you said, you're picking up on astrological changes, and even more so over the next 3 years. And that's exactly how I see it.
I think it's also particularly when Venus actually enters Leo, which will be slightly before August, I think around late June onwards, we will have this kind of foreboding how do I put this, foreboding thoughts and feelings about how much are we committing, how much effort and energy are we committing into our evolution. And this is actually represented here in Juno and also Pluto.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of energies that's coming in. So the second half of the year is very different from the first half. So let us move to the chronological order of what I feel are the important months that's coming for us in 2023. So we've basically talked about the Venus star point in Libra. That's running in the background. That's until August. That's when the Leo star point actually phases in fully. But then the year actually starts off with a bang in March of this year in 2023. And in March, there's a lot of energies like coming in. It's almost like a preview of what the rest of this year is about. And in March, there's not one, not two, but 3 planets, all heavyweight planets. Those are Saturn, Pluto, and Mars, all changing signs in a matter of like 2.5 weeks within the same month. And when I actually see, let's talk about Saturn first. Saturn will move into Pisces, joining Neptune. And this energy is very much about looking back, which is Saturn, into our past and see where we have been kidding ourselves pertaining to things, and try to crystallize like a new way of living, a new foundations of living moving forth. And that's because Saturn and Neptune will eventually come together later on, I think in February of 2026 again. And these few years, it's almost like we are tying up the loose ends of our story in order to start the new chapter. But what I can see is also that when Saturn is in the same sign as Neptune, and when I think about Pisces, there will be a portion of humanity who will decide to transition as well. because the new world template is not for everyone. And this actually represents like a window for them to cross over if they choose to, their soul's choice. And Pluto going into Aquarius. So I think we've gotten like an inkling of that. I think, was it late last year or early this year? There's this thing called Chat GPT, which is like this artificial intelligence software. You just enter like, a question that it just within probably like a minute churns out solutions for you. And this is like very concerning to a lot of people, that jobs will be taken away and all those things. But I do see it as overall a very streamlining and liberating kind of technology that's coming forth in the form of artificial intelligence. So it actually sets humankind to actually do more value-added work. And it actually takes out all those like highly repetitive stuff that's, that we've been doing for God knows how long.
Huge expansion of consciousness. That's what I see.
It does. Yeah.
Huge expansion of, and everything about, like, as last year, the sphere that was running, it was all about shifting us into our higher self. We actually had to, it was instrumental from 2000 to 2029 with all that two vibration. We're recoding in our DNA. We're going through profound, and integrating into our higher self. We're going through a profound shift of consciousness and being. That's what's going on. And the whole mutation process of the DNA around COVID was to help clear a lot of old distortions, old patternings that we've had for lifetimes, not just this lifetime. You know what I mean? Like, and basically, as I predicted many, many years ago, I felt that there will be a global virus that would impact us. And we saw that play out, and I really felt that it was this mutation process of clearing. But with that clearing, what I've always also said is that there would be such a change in our way of being as a society, as a civilization in that process, because as we're clearing this old patterning and we go through this really vital shift of consciousness that has to be orchestrated by our heart. We need to be utilizing more of our higher self. We need to be thinking differently. We need to come out of a place of conflict and so forth, and come into a place of more love and unity. But for that to happen, there had to be a lot of purification, not only internally, but within the world around us. And this is why I see a clearing going on the planet through climate change, because of what's going on in the grid and our DNA. But our DNA is mutating when we're going through a profound shift of consciousness. So how do we come out into the world? Because the world actually has to change as well, right? And that's what we're seeing when what you've been saying astrologically, I feel. There will be a unified process where science and spirituality will definitely come more into a state of balance, and it will expand. The science of healing will get, I feel this year, very much so, is that for the first time ever, I can actually see alternative healing coming more to the forefront. They're starting to look more at the internal system of the body, and science is starting to look at the body and see changes in the DNA. That's what's actually going to birth. But on a parallel level, technology is going to expand. But for us to create this reality, we had to vitally change and not go back into old patterning of evolution, like in Lemire and with Atlantis technology, right? So the way that I see it, this particular year is like, because we've got the tarot that's actually running behind the scenes this year is the Chariot. So the Chariot is in the higher arcana of the tarot. It's like the Atlantean being or the Egyptian being in the chariot with the two sphinx, like the horses pulling the chariot. And the analogy I give, if you're in a divine will and you're connecting more to your higher self and you're going with this incredible change of heart and perception of self and how you want to live and how you see yourself healing yourself and where you put your energy and how you develop your enterprises, right, in this new way, you're going to be in that chariot just going. And it's just going to keep creating and creating. This year is about fundamentally creating the template of our new reality. It's about really instrumentally formulating it, right, through our mind's eye. And if we can move with it, we're going to start creating now, right, in this new way. And all of these, could you imagine all these instrumental changes in people's heart and perception and change in the way they feel? Can you imagine as they live that more, how that's going to change and counteract the purification process that needs to happen on the planet, right? Especially at where, because if we're going through an expansion of consciousness, we're also going to be evolving in the field of science and spirituality. So it's like we can't evolve those attributes in ourself and reality until we purify. So this is a time, the last 2 years has been very much about introspection.
Yes.
And really connecting to their higher self. Whereas this year, like I said, last year, if we can go with those shifts of perception, this year would be about fundamentally templating this whole new way of being that we haven't been before, you know? But in saying that, you know, what I do see the chariot also represents on a higher level, the Merkaba. That's what it represents. So it represents pure will, really running our energy from that heightened state of divine will and perception. And then the universe is going to be behind us. All these astrological energies and beautiful and powerful conjunctions are going to run for us. We're going to be in sync with those waves, cosmic waves, right? But if we can't be attuned in this new way, and we're all going to have to do that is go to our knees and go into divine will and say, okay, what is it that I need to see, and how am I changing it? How can I move forward with what I want to do? And if we can do that more in the moment, we will be in sync and we will create more. But if we can't, we're going to get these, what they call, because behind the chariot is the tower, these trigger events. And like I said, we're going to feel compelled through certain circumstances that play in our life to get us back on track. But also, so there's going to be, with the chariot and the tower behind it, there's going to be trigger events happening in the world that are quite profound. And we're only 2 months in.
Yeah.
Look what's happened already, you know what I mean? So to me, when I look at what's going on in the world and look at what's going on subliminally, and you explaining it also to me astrologically, I see this as all part of this healing effect that's still running.
There'll be certain very like acute trigger points. This year I would say is like it's very good to initiate new beginnings. If you have been just kind of sitting on the wayside for, you know, since the last, I mean, to put it in perspective, 2020 to 2022, we're just trying to get out of the circumstances that we were in. And in 2023, it's like this breath of fresh air. It's time to be initiative if you want to make those changes that you've been like just sitting on it for the past few years. And March also actually presents itself as like a blessing because Venus and Jupiter, the two benefics in the sky, actually comes together in Aries. Aries is new beginnings. So you have like the blessings from the heavens, I like to call that.
Yes.
It's the hallelujah aspect, I call it. And you'll be able to start something new starting in March. But then there's also like Mercury and Saturn. Have you gotten your plans together? Have you planned out your sequence of events that you're going to execute in order to make that a reality? You know, so it's more about pulling up your bootstraps. If you have not gotten your work plan done, maybe by March it will come into, you know, full use. And I think what's really telling is that there's an equinox new moon happening at the first day of Aries season. And this is really like breathing in so much more new bursts of energy that's initiative in nature. And when I think about the chariot, I think about the cardinal signs, which is that initiative energy to start new, to go on that new venture that you've been setting yourself up for leading up to this point. So March is really like the true beginning of the year 2023, really, when I think about it. And now to April. April, there's something really interesting because, as we mentioned earlier, the lunations are really powerful in 2023 because we are in the numerological levels, numerological number 7,
Yeah.
and that ties in with the influence of the South Node or K2 in Vedic astrology. And there's actually the first eclipse that's along the Aries Libra axis. And the very first eclipse along that axis will happen in April 20th at the very last degree of Aries, which is actually the polar opposite point of the Libra star point at 29 Libra. They are in exact opposition, down to the degree. I think it's less than half a degree apart. And so this is like a trigger of like, where have we been sitting on the wayside and just waiting for stuff to happen around us and then take action due to us reacting to external circumstances, then we taking the lead to like make things happen. And this is very much highlighted in this lunation on 20th of April. Yeah.
Honestly, like when the year finished and leading up to, like I felt like there was a lot going on in March, and I felt there would be a lot of changes opening up in the world again in April, like I did last year. And I really felt and this is the first year that I've ever come through the new year, and I felt such a purification going on subliminally in the world, like in the grid, in absolutely everything. I felt like I was treading in water. And it was just, as I tuned into it, I saw this climax of energy running up until the end of March. And then I felt like a trigger events going on, like a, bang, bang, bang kind of thing.
Yeah,
then, which we're sort of seeing this climax through weather and politics and economics. We're seeing all of this, right? Yeah. And there's this bang, 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 and then it's almost like let's just have a shift of perception here, move very differently, like in many, many aspects of self and arenas, right? In a really positive way. And that's how you're sort of seeing it as well, astrologically. And then everything starts to really co-create itself again. Like really, I just feel it's almost like saying, whatever we're not in sync with, we're going to have dreams and visions and perceptions. We're going to have dynamics play out that are really going to tug at our heart and really get us to a place where we want to get involved or get more involved in community or even involved in having a say around different dynamics playing out in the world, and then in doing that, what we're going to do is then really reinforce, hey, we're not going back into the old way.
Yep.
But not
never.
And that's that April transit, and it could be what you were just talking about there with that Venus effect again. But look, I just want to say very briefly too, because as we were talking last year, this Venus effect that's going on, everybody sees Venus around the matters of the heart, and it really does this year of what it's actually doing with the sphere running. It's actually bringing through that element of Venus and the purification and the heart-based consciousness that we're birthing and feelings of love, and compassion for others. What it's actually doing is also empowering us in a whole new way to utilize our mind intuitively and amplify our ability to manifest through our mind's eye. That is a power that hasn't been in our psyche since Lemuria, right? So it's almost like I feel like if we're utilizing our will and our perception in a really pure way, and we're really following through with that and in sync with our higher self and the energies at play in the universe, I believe we're going to be more empowered than we've been for a very long time, because we're actually thinking through divine will. And this is, I feel, being orchestrated by this incredible kind of effect that's going on astrologically, then on top of it through the sphere and the influence on the heart. and the element of water and Venus coming through more, because this sphere also, because of that attribute running, connects us to the goddess vibration of, you know, Aphrodite, Mother Mary, Isis, Hathor. It's about birthing elements in our body for us to shift into a higher vibration, to continue to mutate our DNA, heal and evolve. But it's actually, we're at an instrumental stage of not only awakening in our heart, but the way that our soul is evolving. There's a real change happening alchemically. Look, I'm just going to get a little bit complicated here. I hope I don't confuse. From sorry.
No, it's fine. It's all fine. Yeah.
From a six-dimensional level, there's pranic elements, antimatter or dark matter formulating from a higher plane. That's the plane of the angelic plane. And the elementals get involved with that. But this vibration is being encapsulated into our being. And the only way that we can do that is the clearing of genetic codes and the shifting into a higher vibration. Then if we can do that, we're absorbing prana and light. That's like a creative process, like the beginning of a creation process of a universe. Like it's actually, and that's what Hathor, Isis, and Mother Mary represent, is they're vessels to understand how we can co-create changes in ourselves alchemically as we evolve in our heart and our soul and our consciousness, how we become more, and that's when we're living in a higher reality. So it's almost like as we lift into this higher reality and we're healing ourselves, we instrumentally are making changes in the universe around us, but there will be a clearing of polarity in the universe. So that's why you're going to see a good event and a bad event happening at the same time. Kind of on a global scale, right?
It's the tension, because if I actually think about the Libra Venus star point that's running in the background still in April, May, Libra to me is the most tension-filled sign.
Yes.
Because
balance, right? And
the polarity of things, because nothing beats polarity like Libra.
Yes. So if we can overcome our internal polarity and push forward in this way, heal and purify and come from our heart intuitively, and we will, a lot more people will awaken to alternative means of self-healing. They will, without a doubt. I've never said that before, and I can actually, I've been working with this industry all my life, literally, but I actually see now, because of the way people had to rethink about themselves through the effects of COVID, and literally most people had to really work at healing themselves in that dynamics, it changed them, right? That was one of the changes. But because of what I see coming up, and I think you'll see that astrologically over the next few years, there is going to be an influence for us to go more intuitive and utilize more alternative means in ourself and life, you know what I mean? And our value structure around the earth and climate change is going to increase, thank God, because of that, right? But I do feel that, look, you know, if we can utilize these new mindsets and psychic or sensory perceptions that are awakening, oh my God. And that polarity that's playing out on the planet is for us to reinforce where we sit and how we move forward. And that's when the ones that are really sitting in that place of balance and, you know, union and integration of the higher self and moving in this way will actually become more empowered while conflict continues to run and purify in the world. You know what I mean? That's how I see it playing out. And also, I just want to say, Donnie, it's interesting because the number 7, as we know, is a spiritual number, and it makes us commit to our values and heighten our way of living more in touch with our belief system. And that's really important. That's why people are going to go more into alternative and spiritual practices, be birthing it more so this year, right? Sorry.
There's actually a configuration that occurred last year. I think that's when both spiritual planets, Jupiter and Neptune, actually met up in a sign of Pisces, actually. And that's really talking about alternative medicine and healing modalities, modalities in which you're running a frequency or vibration that's, you can't see it, you only can feel it.
Yeah.
And with that, it also comes with the attraction or the impelling feelings to connect to spirit in a mystical way as well.
Yeah.
It's not so much of orthodox religion, but it's via that new age spirituality as well. And this very much is in sync with Pluto going into Aquarius, is that connection to frequency and vibration of a higher realm.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So it all comes in perfectly.
And we come from, like, last year, the Lovers card was running in the background, which is about that influence again. You know what I mean? That you're talking about astrologically,
Yeah.
and that balance and so forth. But also trying to find harmony by resolving conflict issues, or even find peace within ourselves by overcoming polarity and the lower self, right? But we're going from a 4 vibration, which is the cube, which is matter or creation, bringing in the 3, which is the Trinity, and consciousness, right? So as what that just basically says again, as we're running this new state of consciousness, we're creating. But
Yeah.
that's the threshold that people have to move through the chariot.
Yeah.
That's the key, right?
Yeah. And also in April, I just want to add as a last pointer, we've got Mercury and Uranus coming together in April as well over the solar eclipse. So there may be messages from the gods coming down to actually inspire us, maybe shock us, but I do see this as mostly positive because it will actually shift your paradigm of thought and perception.
Yeah.
In April. So that's how April will take place overall. And when we actually move on to May, we do have a lunar eclipse to accompany the solar eclipse, and that will happen at around 15 degrees of Scorpio, so around 5th or 6th of May of 2023. And in May as well, there's additional Venus star point in Libra activations. So April, May is going to be like this busy period. And that's but this Venus star point that's going to be activated in May will be done by 2 planets. One time by Jupiter at 29 Aries. Again, and the next one will be by Mars, which is at 29 degrees of Cancer. So these 2 dates, May 15th and May 19th, those days you may want to look out for anything that's coming up. Maybe you want to read the news and see what events are coming out pertaining to the world. There may be some significant developments there. And Jupiter will shortly after join Uranus in Taurus in the middle of May. And on May 20th, there's this kind of very tense or challenge-filled aspect pattern in the sky that involves Jupiter, Pluto, and Mars. So May is pretty charged as well. If I were to compare May to April, it's almost like April is like the beginning of things ramping up. And then in May, that's when, wow, a whole bunch of things actually happen. So do look out for May 2023. And I've even put here that because of the signs in which Jupiter, Pluto, and Mars are in, this will pertain to not so much of human-related events, but this is more of geophysical. So what's happening, in February earlier to Turkey, I do see like the geoseismic activity picking up in May of 2023 as well. So a lot of things going on in May as well.
Yeah.
And just as a pointer, from January to middle of May of 2023, up to this point, there's a lot of emphasis on the element fire or the platonic solid tetrahedron, which is all about purification and spirit. And do you have anything to add to this, Alexis?
Yeah, it's like I said, the cube and the tetrahedron coming together, you know what I mean? It's like the fire element, there will be definitely cosmic and astrological events that come through more on an electromagnetic level,
Yeah.
whereas with the moon, it's more on the vibrational level in relationship to changes alchemically going on in our body and in our heart, whereas the fire element's coming through for us to absorb more light, I feel. But it's also, there is changes that need to go on in the grid and that need to go on in the planet. Because as we know, we mutate our DNA through the geometric changes that are going on in the grid. So there's a huge amount of changes going on alchemically within our universe through the grid, as it's also geometrically moving and changing at a vital time to actually enable us to mutate our DNA and change our reality. So I feel that there has to be, with all this two energy, there has to be a balance of elements. So as we've got that water and prana moving in, we've got this electromagnetic frequencies running through stellar activity and events that's actually enabling, and the sun and conjunctions with that as well, that's balancing up the lunar, but in a really specific way, I feel, from an alchemical perspective. So it's like there has to be a change in our body. There has to be a change in how our body's alchemically healing itself and evolving, and how that mutation process is also clearing, and what's going on in the grid is clearing distortions out of the planet. You know what I mean? So the planet's going through, like I said last year, I felt that we were going to clear a lot from our astral plane as we mutate and heal and shift in consciousness. And as I said, the planet is also going to have to clear distortions out of the Akashic codes of the planet and in the astral field of the planet, and all that distortions that's been building up is now clearing into the light. And I just feel, as we look at climate and the effects going on in climate, even if we look at what's actually happened through climate and weather events in the last 12 months up until just a few weeks ago, what we're doing is we're coming together as a society trying to help people in these dynamics of floods and, you know, earthquakes, and where it's actually waking people up to think differently about the earth, which is important for us to live this more Lemurian state of consciousness, right, while technology expands. But it's also, it's a healing that's going on in the earth as it is in our own body and being, right? And I really did believe from April last year there would be an influx of intense climate change, but I actually feel it's going to be as big, if not bigger, this year. But I always try and reinforce to people, look, the fact of the matter is there's a healing going on, and it's all being orchestrated by changes going on through the cosmos, you know, through the elements of the earth and the crystals and the changes going on astrologically in the universe. So it's kind of looking at the astrology that you're bringing through, you kind of get a visual effect of what's behind all of this. You know, it's all mathematically orchestrated by the universe, isn't it?
I mean, like in May, we've got that Mercury, Uranus, Jupiter, Pluto, Mars. It's all like that geoseismic activity related.
Exactly. Yeah.
So May 2023, guys, is going to be like a month to take note of.
Yeah.
And going back to the first 4.5 months from January to mid-May of 2023, I was actually thinking that since there's so much fire in the air, that and so much purification as well that accompanies that, I've actually written down here that you have to really take care to template your own space, and perhaps like frankincense resin resining may be like a very good thing to do from now to middle of May. And if you're feeling like there's too much fire in the air and you're purifying too much, one thing that will bring you back into your center will be Epsom salt. as well, because Epsom salt is actually ruled by a fire sign.
Yeah, good point, Bonnie. Like if we
So
can utilize these procedures and practices, right? Because I think what, at the end of the day, what we're identifying with is how the universe is supporting us,
yeah,
and all we've got to do is do the work and change, right?
yes.
Yeah,
As above, so below, and vice versa, really. Just working in sync, like how the Venus star point actually mentions.
yeah,
I think one of the meanings of the Venus star point is how are you going with the flow of things?
yeah,
That's one key phrase here.
yeah,
And I do sense a lot of like solar plexus depletion as well when there's so much fire in the
yeah,
background. So for people who love crystals, like I do,
yeah,
um, and want to work with crystals over this period from January to middle of May, emerald's a good one, and also citrine. Yeah, those are the two crystals that really come up again and again.
yeah,
Um, and for the remainder of 2023, beginning in middle of May, we actually switch from a predominantly fire-based energy towards a very earth kind of energy, which is resonating with the hexahedron energy. So it's more of like grounding whatever that has happened uh, since the year started, really, all the way up to middle of May.
yeah. And like I said, that cube with the triangle with the 7 coming in, the cube is
Mhm.
the earth element, the triangle is the tetrahedron and the fire,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But I do feel that this pranic energy from a 6-dimensional plane is rippling our consciousness, our heart, our consciousness, you know what I mean, our soul. And that's that is the element we're trying to absorb. It's
Okay.
like as we purify and as we integrate light and as we co-create changes in ourself, our cube and our reality, this prana can actually be absorbed for the soul to make this incredible expansion that it's trying to do. It's kind of being reborn on a whole new level over these upcoming years. It's beginning this new transition of evolution, I feel, in ourselves. So yeah, I totally relate to that, Donnie. It's just the what I did say and what I feel is going to happen, our interest in the earth and conservation of the earth, our interest in how we grow foods and produce and reproduce them and import them is going
Yeah.
to be, there's going to be a change in that industry, because and you can see that happening with the influence of the earth coming through.
Hmm.
And that is one specific change that I do see: interest around grain export, exporting, even through these events that are playing out with climate and within the world around us, that it's going to wake us up to value and work with the earth in a new way. And that's that Lemurian influence coming through more as well, changing our society around that. So you could see possibly with that May, what you're seeing in May with that earth energy coming in,
Yeah.
that could be where it starts to show more signs within our awareness around this, is around that time of the year.
Mm. And if we actually move slightly forward into June, we've got actually some potential little, I call it little blips, little like short and sharp activations, I would call it. And that's when Mercury Uranus will come together for the last time. And then we've got Venus and Pluto as well as a pairing. They're overlooking each other, is an opposition. What this is telling me is that June can serve as a period in which there can be something provocative coming up, something that's very thought provoking, and this may actually be there's some news pertaining to that may shock the collective.
Yeah,
So there's this energy coming forth pertaining to that.
yeah,
And July, I don't see anything big, not as big as the months I mentioned. And then August, middle of August, we actually have that Venus star point formation. And that's when Venus retrograde actually kisses the sun. And this will be in very tight configuration with Uranus and Taurus, which is all about, the green revolution as for Taurus, Uranus and Taurus. And I feel that the, what's that concept called? Farm to table concept.
Yes.
It may actually take off more and more and more because of that, the energy there. And Leo is also where the heart is.
Yeah.
And Uranus is frequency. So we are actually filtering a lot of like, some may call it frequency upgrades, some may call it shift of frequencies, but it's all to do with the heart, which is Leo.
Yeah.
And this will be a time where what is your heart yearning to do? And do you have the heart-based?
That too, I think,
Yeah. And what are your heart-based actions that you're about to take to make it happen? Because VenusStarPoint is about heart-based actions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And last but not least, as we move into Q4 of 2023, October and November, I would say that because we're still technically in year 7, numerology wise, and besides Neptune, there's also the South Node or K2 that's very active as well. And K2, hence, anything to do with lunations and eclipses will be super powerful, like I mentioned before. And October and November is really like a good example of that, because we've not only got one, we've not only got 2, we've actually got 3 lunations, and one of them is actually a lunar eclipse, followed by 2 lunations after that.
Yeah.
There's something that's very compressed here because it's happening back to back to back, literally.
Yeah.
But
I think what it's doing is bringing things to light, and in a really on a really core level.
Yeah.
Like anything that needs to break down or any dynamics that need to play out to really bring things to light and illuminate what we can. Do you see it that way, Johnny? Like, it's, to me, as we get near the end of the year, it's almost like we have to really embody that awareness, that change of consciousness, and that whole, what we've been trying to really be encouraged to purify and co-create and to retemplate and all of these dynamics. I mean, we could be doing it along the year, but we're really going to be triggered, I feel, that October, November, coming to near the end of the year, to really get clear, illuminate it even more so, and co-create a really clear awareness of it. And if we can really template that in our mind's eye, that whole creative process can magically come through. It really is a blessing. It's a magical, you know what I mean? Because of but it has to come through in that way. That's that I'm sensing at that time of the year.
And I would say that this period is very much like Martian in nature. So Mars, like a planet, is almost like a scalpel.
Yeah.
So it's almost like kind of like you're cutting away things. So what I can see is that it's almost like 2023 actually builds up like a crescendo all the way up to the end of the year. And that's when, like, if you have been kind of holding back, despite all these activations, which are kind of intense, I won't lie. And then October and November swings around. It's like, okay, you know what? I guess I have to put my nose to the grind and really do it. It's almost like this is like a cosmic, like, last chance kind of, last opportunity or last window kind of energy if you want to kickstart something. And you'll be able to leave some old patterning and stuff behind as well, because of that scalpel like energy that Mars represents in October and November of this year as well. So very transformative here, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, and also too, I think just being aware, look, the fact of the matter is, I think the more we go into, not introspection, that was last year, but the more we utilize this alternative or spiritual practices that we do, the more we meditate and we're in sync with the changes that we're feeling, the more that we embody those perceptions and changes. I just feel that we're going to be, because the spear represents victory, you see.
Yeah.
So it's about overcoming. All I feel we need to focus on personally is overcoming our own internal restrictions and old mindsets to go in sync with the new ones that are birthing through the universe's influence, right? And the changes going on in our chakra system and in our etheric system and our prana. If we can be in sync with that and utilize also the alternative spiritual practices more, as much as we do in the way that we live and what we do in our life, right? We're actually going to be able to have victory, meaning we're going to overcome this polarity and this purification effect that's going on internally, and we're going to shift into a higher reality. We're going to co-create a really beautiful changes of our future self, more intricately in the moment rather than dreaming about it, right? But I feel that if we're not able to follow through with that spiritual or energetic shift that's actually going on, I think that all of these astrological effects are really going to trigger us. You know, if they go back and listen to what you say and what you say these astrological events do, they're going to possibly even see those triggers going on in their life to help them move forward. So I feel like we can, if we're in sync with them, they're going to raise us, you know what I mean? But if we're not in sync with that change and transformation effect, well, then they're going to trigger us. And that's going to be a consistent process going on throughout the year in different ways, right?
I think the classic phrase that you always use, Alexis, all these years is that surrender and let the magic happen.
Exactly.
And this year in 2023, which is, year 7 numerologically, that is like the core essence of things.
Yeah. And as you said, Johnny, you were going into next year. I'd like to hear your perspective of it. But what I feel that next year, if we can't make that change in our heart as deeply as possible, it's going to compel us to change in the way that we think to the 10th degree.
Right.
So you can imagine if people can't do that, the anxiety that will go on and how things need to dissolve, you know, the illusion around ourself and reality and whatever gets triggered in reality to do that. But if we can do this now, we're going to optimize the next sphere HOD that's coming in, and it's going to bring our mindsets, that magic, more to the forefront. And then if it can come, it's almost like the third eye's pulsating in this effect. And if it can actually come more to the forefront, the way that we filter our consciousness and our reality is going to be so much magical, more magical and fluent. I hate to say more magical because it's actually just the extension of what we're doing this year, right?
Yes.
Because this heart-mind connection, where even neurologically, as our DNA is mutating, and as we know, the symptoms around what's happened through this virus is the heart and the brain, right? Yeah. So it's like, as we're going to be clearing distortions from the base right up, at the moment it's in the heart, right up to the top of the vertebrae and into the brain. But so this system is part of our body and being, and the alchemy it's running through this upper nervous system, and the alchemy in the anatomy there is going to go through a change as well for us to facilitate this consciousness. But because of that more light, this light that you're picking up on, this prana is going to come through. So we're going to, if we got this mindset running through our third eye, delegated by our higher self, that magic's going to keep running simply by thought. But it has to be in this new way. So I've always said for many years that the mental wellness will be, and mental dis-ease will come to the forefront to be healed more, because we need to come more into a state of balance. We need to connect more to our higher self. But really, from this year, well, it started last year, we had to go into surrender and connect to a higher self. But last year, 2022 to 2026, is this real alchemical change, because we're actually going to be clearing distortions genetically through the atoms of our upper central nervous system, from our heart to our brain. If we can get in sync with it now, we're already going to start opening up and become more empowered. This is this Venus empowerment process that I see, right? The heart-based consciousness and the intuitive mindsets birthing. But can you imagine? It's like pure magic. Can you imagine? Because so much of this elements is running in the universe, when we're utilizing this more so, we're bringing that magic into our life and enhancing that. So next year will be that reconnection from the heart to the higher self and the healing of that upper nervous system and all those distortions. That's what this virus was trying to do, is purify.
I'm actually thinking that, I've actually written down like a quote pertaining to Venus and its importance in this Aquarius-like era that we are in.
Yeah.
We haven't yet, guys, moved fully into the age of Aquarius. That will happen like in 2600.
Yeah.
But right now, we are already feeling that Aquarius template coming in. And how does that tie into Venus?
Yeah.
I would say that
You
Venus
think of Aquarius and Venus, right?
Huh?
Expansion of the mind and the heart and all of that we've been talking about.
I would really think that Venus is like the golden key to
Yes.
this age of Aquarian type of energy that we are templating more and more in. And I've actually went back and searched this book called Esoteric Astrology by Alice Bailey.
Oh, yes.
And this particular paragraph really struck me to the core. Alice Bailey actually said that in the Aquarian age, the power of Venus becomes dominant. Yeah. And Venus was the planet which we are told was responsible for the appearance of individualized consciousness in humanity. And in the Aquarian age, Venus will again have an analogous influence of an expanded consciousness of group responsibility.
That's exactly what I see. You've said it in a nutshell. And I just want to say this as we're closing up with this, Donnie, is that, look, you know, as I said last year, with this Venus effect that I see coming in and all of these different dynamics that we're talking about, we're seeing it from a more metaphysical or spiritual perspective as much as we are, because we have to, the heart is going to be the key to everything. It's going to be the key to our healing process. It's going to be the key to our awakening process in a whole new way. But what I did see quite a few months ago, through this, what you're saying here now, and the higher teachings around this empowerment process through the mind, but people find it very difficult to understand that, because the way humanity thinks, it's so, you know what I'm saying? It's so through beta consciousness, it's so through controlled or programmed levels of consciousness, right? Yeah. But what it actually is I had a vision of the Urius symbol in ancient Egyptian times of the cobra coming through the third eye. And when I had this vision, I saw Venus as a comet, not as what we see Venus today. And there was a vibration running until Venus actually come into our hemisphere. Now, this vibration is the vibration that illuminated the mind in the early Egyptian mysteries, I believe, the high priest and priestesses, that focused on this level of enlightenment to illuminate reality through consciousness, to have this illuminated power of thought, feeling, and divinity, and where that can take us and what that can create for us. Well, that we've lost that ability. We need to, that's the beginning of this birthing process, this beautiful illumination of consciousness. We've got to deprogram this distortion and the way that our anatomy or our electromagnetic system is running and our light body comes in. Well, if we're in touch with that's going to be that pure power of intent, thought, and creation, right? So sometimes I see this Uranus symbol coming through my third eye, and I identify with Venus and the changes within the human consciousness in this on this really core level. This is the root behind it, I feel, with what you were talking about around the Hermetic teaching. It actually comes from a vibration that I believe Venus, and they say that Venus is a comet. There is some Hermetic teachings around that, but this is the way I see it, had a two-tailed spin. And Venus, as it rises above the horizon and it sets, it's seen like light coming in up at the day and going into the night at dark. And that's what consciousness does, like seeing through the dark, seeing through the confusion, seeing through the dis-ease into the light, you know what I mean? And as we do that, everything becomes light. Everything becomes pure. Everything is created through divine intervention. So it's like that whole polarity aspect of the two tails, even behind the comet Venus, before it became part of our solar system. And they actually say there's a possibility, and I'm considering this, that it had a strong conjunction at that time with Jupiter. So it's almost like Jupiter's our spiritual expansion, and Venus is this consciousness as it bursts. That's what actually happens with us, right? So that, to me, I didn't get a chance to talk about that more in the channeling that I've just done, but I did mention that there is a power behind the way that our mind is changing. Now, as we evolve, I feel, over through these years, that's going to be the key to everything. That ability to think in this way and create through this pure, more illuminated state of consciousness. But there is an alchemical change that will happen in the brain and the central nervous system, but that's going to be natural. See, is if we can go with sync with these energies, that's going to be an alchemical change. And if we do our spiritual practices and our alternative healing and meditation, and implications and whatever we do around that, that's going to actually enable us to open up to this. Yeah.
Very much so. And I will go on to say that it is through Venus and her energies that we actually evolve. Because astronomically, the axis in which the planets actually rotate, Venus is the only one that spins away from the sun.
Okay.
The rest of the planets actually spin towards the sun. So towards the sun, involute. Or involution. Turning away from the sun is evolution.
That's so amazing. And I think that even though we've talked a lot about Venus, we're looking at the spiritual perspective of it. It's going to come and go astrologically. So I don't want to take away from everything else, because without that, this is not going to happen. Everything is, as I've always said, every single thing that happens in the universe is so instrumentally important to the whole. I just feel, because of this emphasis that I see around Venus in this unique way, and then it being part of the sphere for this year, and then you showing it up astrologically, we're just getting in touch with that undercurrent, I think, of change that's going on in our psyche, in our consciousness.
There's just more divine feminine energies coming in over the decades to come. I think that's what we are trying to explore more and bring in, Venus in her lightness and everything. And going on to the year 2026, which is also very interesting. So just to recap, like 2023 to 2025 is like we are in the tightest part of the birth canal. That's how I will see it. And in 2026, there's something interesting going on. And this chart is actually cast for, I think, July of 2026. And those planets in which I've highlighted in magenta, so we've got Pluto, Juno here, we've got Neptune, Uranus, and then here we've got Jupiter and Hygeia, the goddess of sanitation and health. And all this, you can see, it actually forms this shape here. So it's much more easier to see. This in astrology is what we call the cradle. How we actually host the baby in a cradle. And it seems like all the outer planets and also social planets, minus Saturn that is over here, all the rest are just forming this nice little shape. It's almost like we are, how do I put this? We are protected. It's like this protection energy because cradle, right? This is where the baby sleeps in and feels safe.
Yeah.
And we will be having this energy in the middle of 2026. And I've actually plotted this against this graph, which is called the Barbault graph. Andrea Barbault is a French astrologer who does mainly like mundane or world astrology. And this graph basically indicates the lower that we get, the less chance of like peace on earth and also prosperity. And I've actually written here that we may head back to better times pre-2020 in 2026. And coincidentally, 2026 is numerology year one, which is new beginnings. So, but however, I do see that in 2025, the year prior, which is year 9 in numerology, things will have this this change of like a turnaround on a collective level. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that's awaiting us. So I would say that, you know, like this is like a whole new I like to call this the air era paradigm because in the background, way in the background, we actually have this very airy elemental energy running. And this is actually formed via the sign-based meetup or conjunction points of Jupiter and Saturn, which are the markers of historical change. And this doesn't change often, guys. Jupiter and Saturn, when they conjunct in certain sister signs, for example, this only occurs like every 200 years. So since the Industrial Revolution, the late 1700s, all the way to 2020, this Jupiter-Saturn energy, which are the historical markers of societal and cultural change, has always occurred in the element of Earth. And so it kind of explains the materialistic mindset. Everything is go, 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 productivity. I've got to show my invincibility. That's why we built the Burj Khalifa, for example, to show the prowess of countries and everything's, you know, like material Earth sign. From 2020 onwards until like 200 years later, we are resonating more as a collective with the element of air. So this is not like a compressive energy. This is more of like a horizontal energy. This is how I would mark it, because air actually has a very horizontal energy. So it's more about equity rather than equality, like what we actually like preach like in the Earth era. Now we are already post 2020. It's time to talk about equity instead. And there's a lot of this kind of energy that filters down as a change in work trends and work landscape. I do see that in 2026, there will be this huge entrepreneurial wave.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting when you're talking, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is mainly contributed by the mid-millennials. That means those born like in towards the end of the 1980s.
Yeah.
And then those born after, which is Gen Z.
Yeah, yeah.
The Earth era is more of like the fixed hours, like 40-hour weeks, every day 8 to 5 p.m. Yeah. When we move into this post-2020 air elemental era, things will become much more flexible and more decentralized.
So do you think, Donnie, by what we've been saying, this whole change over these few years is so that we can become those people and become that reality? If we're not if we're not, and the people that, like, again, the word that you said, cradle of civilization, just really moved me, because
Yeah,
it's like a whole birthing process. And it's interesting, I
it
was
is.
listening to something the other day, is what we believe. We know that there's a fabric of reality that undercurrents absolutely everything and ties everything together, right? And
Mm,
when you're in sync intuitively in this way, you're creating in your reality all the time. The thing is, but because everything's in such a slower vibration, and because of our mindsets, everything has been creating in the way that it has been. But there's a radical change in consciousness, right? And
yeah,
there's a whole, how can we tap into this incredible technology of knowledge in the universe, ingrained within the universe, the grid system of our reality, and filter that into our reality and create our new world if we're not living that consciousness?
that's so true. Yeah.
It's such
Um,
a beautiful, because I feel like everything is gonna, like I said, with this channeling for the year, everything's gonna have to clean up.
yes.
Technology, a holographic matrix system of the web, the way that we run our consciousness is a hologram. Everything has to clean up, and we have to birth, I feel. Well, not have to, we're being encouraged to birth this new way of consciousness. And as we get light and prana in our system, there's so much knowledge stored within the consciousness of the universe through this grid system that, and even when I'm looking at you, Johnny, I'm seeing all this geometry behind you,
Yeah.
kind of kind of triggering me while I'm talking. That's where the science, the and we're going to get the science of technology, and that's where we're going to get the science of alchemy and spirituality, and the way that we utilize prana and light and frequencies in our system, and that Lemurian Atlantean consciousness is birthing again in a really more pure way.
Mm.
But when you said that, to me, I can see fundamental changes in our reality coming through because of that consciousness and the expansion within
Yeah.
the systems of our world, right? And it's that soon that we're going to start feeling that.
Actually, when I think about, in retrospect, 2023 to 2025, before this very magical cradle shape in the sky actually occurs, the new consciousness is actually birthed, to
Yeah,
be
we're
honest.
birthing it. We're
Yeah,
birthing it.
birthing it. So even though the birth canal is very hard to wiggle through, but at the
Yeah.
same time, we are like templating so much of stuff within us. So I won't sugarcoat things. The body will go through a lot. Um, the psyche also will go through a lot, but then there's so much potential to harvest is just unimaginable. It's just like a once in a lifetime chance, really, when I think
Yeah.
about it. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
So
I hope everybody feels high after that one.
I just want to end on a good note, really.
Yes.
So Alexis, before you go, do you have anything to plug, like pertaining to training, academies,
Oh,
writing projects, or mass healings that people might be interested in?
well, thank you, Johnny. You know me very well. You know the energy very well. We know we're always doing something, aren't we? Well, we all know that Johnny runs Transference Healing, and that we have quite a lot of graduates that run it all over the world. And obviously, we have a website that you'll have a link to at the bottom there,
Yes. In the
transferencehealing.com.
description box, yes.
Yeah, and so people can receive the energy. You can receive it absentee. It has helped a lot of people. It's very alchemical. Um, to really not only mutate their DNA through this virus, but also just in the process of self-healing and
Yeah.
enlightenment as well. But also too, from a personal perspective, I think the girls have got up on the TH website now that I'm doing an online training in June
Mm-hmm.
2023. So I'll have to look at that chart.
June
Oh,
2024.
2024,
Yeah.
sorry. I have to look at the chart and see what's going on there, because I always pick dates that are relevant in some way. But the other thing that I'm doing, that I'm writing the book,
Mm-hmm.
that's quite a venture. It's taking a few years with this one, but it's my holy grail. I feel I've worked all my life to understand this technology and write it. So, I do have an academy of learning where I do work online, and people can, book in and be a part of that school where they get universal channelings every 3 months, and over the upcoming 3 or 4 years as I write the book. They get a lot of information, and of course there's an alchemy running behind it. It gives people such a bigger picture, not only on themselves and their own process of evolution, but I think just so much of a much broader perspective of what's actually going on as well. So if people are interested in joining the Academy, they can go on to that link as well, that you'll have there, that Donnie will have up there. So yeah. So
any recent mass healings that people might want to have access to in order to like filter in the energies like for this few years?
That's a good point, Donnie. You know, there is mass healings that are much more affordable and they're very impactful. I mean, each one goes for a couple of hours and you can just take your steps from, you know, I've got certain ones on chakras, to the angelic plane, to the God Goddess series, to star seed systems and all sorts of things. So if you're interested in doing something like that where you can just, you know, do certain kind of mass healings one after the other, it's so much more like a stepping stone to enjoy channel material with an energy behind it if you're interested as well. So I think you've been part of some of those in person, even back in the day.
I have actually
I remember
tried.
Yeah.
So you may find all this information at www.transferencehealing.com. I'll put the link in the description box. So thank you so much, Alexis, for your contribution to this discussion. I think it's very much needed as we move, you know, into the elemental air era. I think people are ready for it. Air is consciousness.
Certainly is, right? And thank God we're enjoying our spiritual lifestyle now more so, I think. We're actually starting to really, really enjoy what that creates for us, which is going to be wonderful. So I want to thank you, Johnny. It's been amazing, and love and light to everybody who listens.
Oh yeah, you're always welcome back onto the channel. I just want to say, I think people will really love this recording. So yeah, till next time then.
Bye.
Right, bye.
Bye.